Hey everyone, I'm so happy you're here. So, in case you don't know why you're here and don't know who I am, I'm Wendy Taylor, and I am an executive coach, coach for executives and entrepreneurs with ADHD, and a job search coach. And if you know me in real life, or if you're one of my clients, you also know that I have had my own grief journey in the last 2 years. And I found that you would think that all my work experience is what helps my clients a lot as they go through job loss and the pressures of job searches while they're living their lives and experiencing other losses. But what I've learned in the last 2 years is that my personal grief journey has actually been helpful to my clients going through their journeys while they go through a job loss, a job search, and whatever else life has thrown at them. And so that is why I want to introduce you to Sally Wright. So, she is a grief and life coach, and she empowers successful, busy women to navigate the emotional aftermath of losing a parent without sacrificing their careers or sense of purpose. And yes, she said parent, but she and I have had a lot of conversations, and this goes beyond loss of a parent for sure. So, Sally, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Wendy.
And I think it would be really interesting for us to talk a little bit about how we got to be here today. So, do you want to kick that off?
Sure, I'd love to. So this all started with basically both of us just having like a regular Zoom conversation back many months ago, and we realized that there was a lot of overlap, not just personal overlap with personal losses, but I too went through a pretty major job career change in the last 18 months, and so it was shocking how much we had to talk about. But recently, Wendy, you told me a statistic. I'll see about how many. You told me 4 stories of clients of yours who you've had recently who were dealing with both major life changes and job loss at the same time. So, do you
Yes.
want to tell just
Yes.
snippets of those?
Yes. So, one of the things I've noticed in the last 2 years is that oftentimes loss of a job is paired with another loss, either just before or just after. And it's demoralizing. And the first one of those stories was someone I knew in my personal life before my late husband and I met, and she and I were on a board together, and she was having a really rough time facing her job search because of some personal losses she experienced. And um and at one point she said in our group coaching calls, Wendy, could you address how you have done the work you're doing on your business to get new clients and grow your business in the face of your loss, because I could use some help. And she really taught me something valuable. And then since then, I've had a number of people that come to me having lost jobs, sometimes in 2 cases, jobs they've had for 20 plus years. And they've got other stuff going on. And I'm intentionally not sharing the details of any of those
Of course.
stuffs, but the reality is all three of those stories plus a couple others, huge losses at the same time, and or very near each other and overlapping. And that is what I shared with you. And it's really been eye-opening to me. I'll say that.
Me too, even. And I've worked with grief for 15 years with lots of different types of people and different families and types of grief. And it was really in talking to you that I was able to express my own career transition as a function of loss. And that the grief response was actually even more intense than when my dad died 10 years ago. Very different things. But the intensity of the grief and the processing through it has been very different than when my dad died 10 years ago. So yeah, fascinating.
It really is. So that's really how we came to be here today. Is there anything else we wanted to share about that before we move on?
I don't think so.
I think we've got that covered. Okay. So, why don't we talk about, so the word, I believe the right word is compounded grief. So what is it and how prevalent is it?
Yes, Wendy, preparing for today, allowed me to find researched numbers, and these have truly shocked me. And like I said, I've worked with grief for 15 years, and to be shocked by the numbers has been definitely eye-opening for me. But so compound grief is the grief of having more than one experience of loss in the same 18 to 24-month period. And so that could be a death and a job loss. That could even be job loss and divorce. It could be lots of different types of these major life changes. But the statistic I found was that 43% of people who experience one major loss will have another within 12 months. It stopped me in my tracks and it made me go, why are we not, as a society, just coming around people who have major life losses and just saying, we're going to support you because another one might be coming.
Yeah.
It just made me even more realize how important this work is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that people who experience both job loss and grief of a loved one show 2.5 times higher rates of complicated grief that definitely requires a therapist, definitely requires counseling and long-term work as well. And so it just really showed me how much is there and how important it is to really support each other and
Mhm.
people in these life transition moments. Um, oh, and this one I thought was really good for you, Wendy. And for those who are listening who are in the job hunting process in the moment, is that this type of compound stress reduces cognitive function. So it like changes how our brain works,
Mhm.
and it changes it by 40% compared to just a single stressor. So like even just the act of getting up and looking for jobs and applying and doing resume, these really, really tangible things, is severely impaired by this losses that stack.
And it's interesting because that first person I mentioned really taught me that. And I used to have a method for how I helped people apply to jobs and customize their resumes. And she is the reason I changed that method. And she went to Yale. She's brilliant. She's a great writer. And she's like, Wendy, I know I've been following you for years. We're friends. I know I'm supposed to customize resumes. And I'm like, yes, but you're not in an okay place right now.
That's it.
And you're only getting 3 done a week because it's too much. We have to make it easier for you to do this. And I knew from my own experience that my brain changed in those first 6 months of grief. And I actually did a little research and found that grief and ADHD overlap in the brain, even if they're not compounded.
Ooh,
So,
fascinating.
as someone who's the ADHD coach, and I love ADHD brains, this is how much I love ADHD brains. I am in deep grief. And when I found that out, I got excited because I was experiencing some of what they experience all the time.
Yeah, you got a
And it gave
glimpse into that
I
world.
got a
Yeah,
glimpse into that, and that gave me some purpose for my pain, right?
yeah,
And shortly thereafter, I actually got out of the worst of it, and my brain started working like Wendy's brain normally does, but which is a lot to handle, but not ADHD. So, so I just wanted to throw that out there about the brain piece because that's really huge. And job searches are hard. And even if everything's going hunky dory and you quit your job to get away from a bad boss and you're totally fine, have plenty of money in the bank, it's still hard. And most people are not in that situation. So,
right. Well, and it also builds on, for me, this idea that grief, when we think of grief, is very focused on like the death of someone that we love or that we've been close to.
mm,
And this has illustrated for me that career loss, like professional loss, is sometimes even more impactful. And to apply that lens to transitioning from my former career as a pastor to now a grief and loss coach, I mean, it's almost been comical when people are like, "Oh, it's like you are having your own grief, Sally." And I was like, oh, "What? You're right." But I think about that for people who choose to leave careers and jobs, whether that's an active choice or whether that was a choice chosen for you, or even professional loss, like when you don't get the sale or you don't get the job. Like there's all these sorts of little teeny tiny ways that
Mhm.
loss shows up professionally.
Yeah.
Um, but it is particularly hard when we see that collision of death of a loved one grief and loss of a job.
Yes. Yes, that is particularly hard. So do you want to dive into a little some of the practical tools that might be really helpful when you're facing these kinds of losses?
Yeah. In fact, I don't think I don't think we have it linked here, but I have a survival guide. I call it when I don't know what I called it when when two worlds collapse, a survival guide for grief and loss. And I have it ready for you all. We'll get the link out to you all somehow. But
So if you
in
want
it,
that, let us know. DM us or drop it in the comments. So
there you go.
just say, what was the word? There was a verb. What was the verb?
I said when two worlds collapse, a
Collide. Okay,
survival guide.
collide is the word I was looking for. So you're going to drop collide in the comments, or you're going to drop collide in one of our DMs and we will get it to you. And don't, no one's judging you when you can't spell collide. Because I picked a really hard word to spell to give as your call to action.
Yeah, you could even be like, "What was that thing you said
Yeah,
you
what
would
was
give
the
me?"
thing I was supposed to say, Wendy? Yeah,
We'll give it to
that's
you.
what you
No
could do.
problem.
We'll read your mind. We've got it. Okay.
Yeah, so some of the things are in some ways super super simple and I you use them with clients, but it's that sense of daily triage. What has to be done today? And even breaking it down on really hard grief days to the top 3 things and literally just not doing the rest, saying this is what I'm going to get done today and being happy with that.
Mm,
Because again, your brain is different than it was before. So it's
yeah.
how do we utilize the brain that you have now
Yeah.
instead of judging the brain that you used to have.
Yeah.
Um, and so that sense of just daily triage, figuring out the top 3 things that must be done. Maybe it's I've got to call the lawyer. I've got to I've got to update one resume and I'm going to search for 20 minutes for jobs. Done. Done.
Yeah.
Um, And also this sense of energy check-ins, again, super easy, but it's just being real with ourselves that in any given day, we're going to have ups, we're going to have downs, or in any given week, we're going to have ups, we're going to have downs. And how do we utilize those ups and downs strategically is
Hmm.
kind of the way I think about it, is on high energy days, days that we wake up and life is good, we
Hmm.
want to utilize that energy as much as possible to do to handle estate things, to work on job things, and on the low energy days, that's when we can do things like scroll through LinkedIn and do some of these really and Facebook and just do some of these really low energy sort of passive things, or you know
I
connect
love
with
that
the
so
people.
much
Yeah.
because we're actually doing that with a lot of my people now. It's like, especially, well, many of my people, we talk about, we have different words for it, but it's like, what are the tasks that you find less hard? What are the tasks that you find really hard? And then how do we align them in your week? Where do you do them? What do you do before you do them? All of those kinds of things.
Yes, getting really, really specific.
Yes.
Like that mental work. I'm gonna see myself doing this before I do
Yes.
it is
Yes.
so helpful.
Yes.
Um, and one of the other things that I like to talk about is it seems to me that as adults, we all have this ability to like stuff emotion where nothing can touch it. And that is indeed a really helpful skill. And there are times that we need to do that. And there are times to take out those feelings, those emotions, all of that, and pull it out and deal with it. And so I talk about it as grief containers, this sense of like, there's going to be containers that you are going to need to stuff in and put it up, because you do have to prepare. You do have to go on interviews. You do need to, all of these really, really tangible things. But that's not every minute of every day.
No.
So finding a regular rhythm, maybe it's 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening, where you can pull out some of those emotions and pull out some of that grief and allow yourself to do that work. So it doesn't take over your day, it doesn't take over your life. You can stuff when you need to stuff, but also pull out when you can. Um, because my theory is no one chooses grief. No one walks in and says, I can't wait to have someone I love die, and I can't wait to not have a job. No one says these things. And so to be able to just be really intentional about how we do it can go a long, long way, and not getting lost in the chaos.
I wish I knew you 2 years ago because I love that. I am the biggest rock star of stuffing emotion ever. So I actually had to learn how to pull out the stuffing. And that's been a very fascinating process. But I love that idea of acknowledging there are times where you do need to stuff it. And then, but let's make space for a safe time for you to pull out the stuffing. I really, really, really love that.
Well, and interestingly enough, I've been able to realize, so I was a pastoral care pastor in my past life, and I did tons of funerals. I saw people in hospitals and ICUs and care homes and all the things. Grief was prevalent in the work, and it was an honor to do it, very intimate spaces, to be invited in as a pastor. And yet now, having 18 months out, I'm realizing I have some of my own grief from that I had just stuffed down really, really,
Oh,
really, really far,
yes.
because professionally, we're not to be the ones to break down and cry.
Yes.
Professionally, we're to be the ones who know how to do this, who know how to lead families through this. And now I'm going, oh, I think I stuffed those down a little too far. Huh.
Oh.
Ooh, that was fun to realize.
Oh, I bet that was. I actually
Mm.
congratulated my pastor on Sunday because he told a deathbed story, and I sat in the
Ooh.
choir loft and cried. And I waited in line to talk to him afterwards. I'm like, "Thank you so much for making me cry today." And
Yeah.
he apologized. I was like, "No, it's good for me."
Yeah, that sense
But
of catharsis.
yes, but yeah, like I don't need to do that really at this stage in the game. But you know what? If that comes up, then I'm going to let that happen. And it didn't hurt anyone that I was wiping my eyes off in the choir loft before I had to sing. So, definitely.
No, and
I
if
love that.
anything, there was a release of some sort.
Oh,
I don't know
yeah.
what it was. I don't even know that you need to know what it was, but it was. It's this sense of
Yeah.
like, I now have the freedom to express that emotion in this moment. Because
Yes.
not every moment allows those types
Yes.
of emotions.
Exactly. Exactly. So, definitely. Okay. So, um say our we had 3 tools. Say them, can you repeat them again? The
Yes,
2
I
caring
had
lead wants
the
to repeat them again.
yes. Let us underscore this. So we had the daily triage, and that is simply just waking up every day and acknowledging truthfully with yourself. Is this a high energy day, a low energy day, or like most days, probably in the middle? And therefore, choose your activities based upon your energy that day. But the key to this is to actually be honest with yourself. So, like, that's the hardest part of this. The concept is easy, realizing what's happening inside of us is the hardest. always
Mhm.
by far. Grief containers is the one where I was talking about how there are times that we need to stuff things in
Mhm.
and kind of put it aside, and there are times that we need to sort of pull things out and look at it and process it. And then the third one was energy check-ins. So it's that any moment of any day, we're going to have different energy levels. And so how do we use those strategically? Again,
Mhm.
acknowledge where you are, choose your activities based upon that energy level.
Mhm.
Don't judge your, like, there's no need to judge us.
No.
There's just no need. There's no need to spend that energy. You just go, okay, here's where I am today. Therefore, I'm going to be more active or a little more passive in the activities that I choose.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Um, so I want to think a little bit more about how we talk about the job loss stuff and the grief component of that. So should we dive a little bit more into that?
I think so. And it might be helpful for me to kind of talk through my own
Yes.
leaving and
Yes.
how I see that translating
Yes, I
because
think that'd be awesome.
yeah, so part of the truth is the real part of the truth is that I loved the job I was in. I loved the church. I loved the people. Um, I didn't leave for all of the like major reasons that people leave jobs, except it became very clear that my wife couldn't be head of staff at a church because she's also a pastor, and I couldn't have this job at the same time and us have a family. It, there was just not enough hours in the day, not enough money in the bank account to, do all the things. And so it became very clear that I needed to step away. And so leaving was the best choice and also so hard.
Yeah.
This was a community that I had grown to love and that had grown to love me. And so stepping away from just the community of it, like the people that I saw on a regular basis, on a daily
Mhm.
basis, was heartbreaking because um, Wendy and I are both Presbyterians. And the only reason why I'm telling you all this is because Presbyterian pastors are not allowed to go back to their previous congregation um, within a year. And when they do go back after that year, they always have to ask the the pastor, the moderator of the session. And we do that so that former pastors don't meddle. We get it. And also, it's a very clear, hard boundary. And so
Yes.
to go from this really robust, active life engaging with all these different types of people to basically sitting in my basement was huge. And so part of what I've realized is I've had to do deep identity work. Who am I
Yes.
now that I'm no longer a pastor, even though I'm
Yes.
still ordained? What does that mean? Like I still have the credentials and the certification, but I'm no longer like pastor. That's
Mhm.
weird. Um, and so the sense of identity has been big, as well as this sense of like not just who am I, but what's my purpose now? Even though I
Mhm.
knew like I'm credentialed to be a coach, I have coaching hours. It's not like I am a fly by night kind of person. But again, it's that sense of how do I integrate that?
Yeah.
And then I had this one coach, like even saying it out loud sort of still sears me to my core. But she asked me the question. She goes, what would it be to dissociate from your identity as a pastor?
As someone with so many pastor friends, it's just
Yes.
like I
And the truth is, I don't know. But it made me think of like the engineers of the world, the teachers of the
yeah.
world, the CEOs of the world, the people who are so in their jobs, partly because, they really love it. It's a vocation, it's a calling.
Yeah.
and to then be separated from it is hard work. I've had a lot of people who've retired, sort of in that retirement
Yes.
place, express some similar things of like, who am I now?
Yeah.
What does it mean? What do I do with my time? I wake up in the
Mhm.
morning and what happens?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm confident that that transition was incredibly hard for my father. Um, and certainly people for whom there isn't a massive community outside of their work, or their
Yeah,
job was so community enhancing and so identity fulfilling. But yeah,
yeah. So this
definitely.
for me, yeah. And so I think it's a sense of, I think sometimes we're kind of sold this idea that we're just changing jobs, like it's just simple. It's just a new entry on the resume. When in actuality, we end up kind of grieving who we were in that position.
Yes.
And my question, my sort of running question is, do we take that with us into our next new role? And I think that's what we're going to talk about the next time you and I get
Yeah,
together.
we are. We are going to talk
But
about that. So you will get more of this, people. So
you
more of this is coming. This is not
it's
the
coming, it's coming.
but I love the not just an entry in the resume.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking of two things. So I want to share a little bit more about my story because I think it'd be helpful because there was something that jumped out. So when
Mhm.
I lost my husband 2 years ago, I had two friends in Nashville, four if you counted their wives. Um,
Yeah.
I was in a very bad financial state, and I had really gotten pretty far removed from who I was professionally.
Mm.
And this past Wendy's are pretty freaking amazing. But I'd lost all of that over the last 20 years and certainly over the last 3 years at that point. And so I was starting from scratch for all the things at the same time. And I had made a decision before his diagnosis that I was going to stop management consulting and just do coaching. And so I just kind of went about, well, how does that become my full income? But the journey has been fascinating. It has been
Mhm.
fascinating looking back at all the different Wendy's, mourning the Wendy I lost in what was actually a lovely marriage, but I still lost that Wendy.
Yeah.
And then how do I build an entire life? And we're at just about 2 years. And I've just had the best 2 months business wise, but the best month emotionally and socially in that time. And it's a lot of work, but that looking at all of those things. So I'm talking about that identity from past lives. And one of the things I first was looking at is who was I when I met him? And
Mm.
what part of that person do I want back?
Yes. Well, and let's see if this name fits that, but sort of like values realignment. Like, what
Yes.
values do you want to pick and choose
Now.
from past
Yes.
Wendy's to take into now? Right.
Yes. And what do I want to add that's never been there? And
Yeah.
that's fascinating. It is
Yeah.
fascinating the shifts that have come from intentionally listening and intentionally creating space and intentionally saying, and I literally said this to a client today. I said, and she's someone who lost a job of 25 years and, you know, other stuff in your life. And she did the most amazing job. I had her go and do a home retreat and come up with ideas of things she might want to do next. And she did it the way I would have done it if she'd done it at my home when I do founders retreats with colored Post-its for each of 4 categories and then put it in a PowerPoint and presented it to me visually.
Yes, she did.
Oh, yes. But it's amazing. 4 very different paths. And she really looked at the pros and cons, but she did both brains. It was the most powerful thing. And one of the things I kept saying to her is, What does you now want? What do you now
Mm,
want? The you now. You get to decide. This is an opportunity to create your next piece. And she's in the same decade I'm in. And it's like, what do you want now? It was just the most
mm,
powerful conversation. And it happened today, a few hours ago. Of
mm.
course.
Powerful. Oh,
Yes.
just powerful.
And that's the cool thing I get to do with people.
I love it. I love it, Wendy. And you've done a little bit with me. Some
Yeah.
paid and some not paid. Sorry about that. But you've done some of it with me. Um, well, and it also sort of dawns on me this sense of like the the intentional support stacking that we have. Like I was thinking about when I was leaving my career and switching careers, I had an active psychiatrist on board. I had an active therapist that I was seeing, I think, weekly at the time, and I had an active life coach. And it was a powerful and that was along with family and close
Yeah.
friends, like the normal support that we all have. And so it dawns on me just how important the work that you and I do is to be a part, not the whole
Yes.
sum, to be a
Yes.
season, to be a part of this sort of intentional support stack of, because our brains are not functioning the way they normally do. So of course we want the best help we can get at the times when we need it the most.
Definitely. And that's a huge piece with my ADHD people. I always say, you have your therapist, you have the doctor who prescribes meds if that's part of your plan, but those people can't help you with how ADHD plays with your career.
Yeah.
And so that's why you need me in the mix. And
Yeah.
I also talk about that in long-term career planning is, okay, so you have me, but let's build a mentorship board, and you're going to talk to them once a quarter. You're going to have 4 of them, and they're going to represent different future yous. Do you think you're ever going to have a family? Some of them need to have a family then, in addition to the different career outcomes. And we build this all strategically. And because you can't have just, and if there's anything I learned 2 years ago, if all you got is one person,
Yeah. It's not enough.
that's not enough. This
It's
is,
not enough.
this is, life is hard. These losses are hard. Career transitions are hard. Life transitions are hard. And you need to have the right people on your team. And friends are a huge part of that. I mean, that's why I've put a lot of energy into, as my sister called it, building a friend funnel.
I love it. Well, and I can't remember the number, but you had people over to your house recently, and I
Yes.
think everyone in the room you didn't know 2 years ago, four
Yeah.
years ago,
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had 19 people at one of my tech meets music dinner salons, and none of those people did I know in August of 2023. Not a single one of them. Yeah.
It really underscores for me the intentionality that you've put in your grief journey. And one of the things that I have discovered is that most people, most of the grief gurus out there, like they have their books, they have their things. But coming at it from a coaching perspective, I'm so thoughtful about the moving forward. What
Yeah.
is it going to take us? Take the
Yes.
take my clients to move forward. And I'm
Yeah.
shocked by how many people
Don't.
just haven't thought about that way with grief.
Yes.
And I get it. I get it.
I get
And
it.
so I just keep thinking it's such a sort of, what if we could open that up a little bit? What if we
Yeah.
could say, yes, you didn't choose this. You don't want to be here, but how do we use this disruption to better you for the future?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
yeah.
It's just amazing. One of my biggest frustrations is people who saw this as a one-dimensional thing. And I'm like, I'm recreating my entire life. Ask me how that's going, please. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't mean to sound mean about all the
No.
lovely people who were like, "Oh, sweet widow," but
Yeah. Well, it's a sense of you can't see the for people aren't seeing the forest for the trees, is
yeah,
that we're so concerned about this one facet
yeah,
without realizing that it's actually also an opportunity, not
yes.
one we chose,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
one we
No,
like.
I didn't choose it, I didn't choose the timing, but it's here, and what am I gonna do with it? And that doesn't mean that I don't need all the other things and the expressing and the crying and whatever, but or that I didn't need those. Normally don't
Yeah.
need them now, except when sermons are about deathbeds. But but the reality is that here we are. And whether it's a job loss or the loss of a person or a loss of a marriage, because that's sometimes what I see with some of my clients,
Yeah.
um, is that close to a job loss. And whatever those losses are, um, just really taking this opportunity to decide what's next for you. And I literally have been working with people who worked for the federal government for decades and took the buyouts, and we're figuring out what they're going to do next. And that process, I'm seeing the loss in the two people that I've been working with in particular on that. And it's an honor to be on that journey with them.
Yeah.
But those are huge shifts. Those are huge changes. But it's also, what do you want? And now with one of them who's in my full program, we're really talking about, what does she really want? And she still has a couple more years of one child in high school, so that means she has to stay in the same town. But what does she want, and what does she care about? And literally, like, oh, you're an artist, but I can't make the money I want to do doing that. I'm like, well, let's actually prioritize you having time and space for the art. Let's actually have more of that in your life. That kind of
Yes.
conversation. Who are the people that she cares about? And she has populations that she wants to serve with her skill set. Those are just really important, whatever your situation is, whatever loss that inspired you to come here today and be with us and see two friends talk with each other, because that's kind of sort of what this is.
We call ourselves business besties.
We do.
Well, and you were talking about one of your clients, and I have a client who I was shocked at how, like, you're talking like, what am I doing after my last child moved out of the house? I
Hmm.
have one client that I was convinced for the first 6 months of our working together that I was just like, oh, this is failing, because we were talking about such basic things: sleeping patterns, eating patterns, visiting the doctor. And it dawned on me after 6 months of this, that's what she needed.
Yeah.
She had to put all of these individual pieces back together. And at one point she said, I used to know these things. I don't know why I forgot them. And I just thought, that's it, because your brain is different and life happens, and we just forget coping skills or coping
Hmm.
techniques that we used to have.
Yeah.
But it's leading now to these questions of, what do I want? How
Hmm.
do I want it? What does that look like? Which is fascinating to me. We had to get through the basics
Yeah.
before we could get to the more purposeful, meaningful
Yeah.
questions. So
And
if you are nowhere near what's next, don't worry about it.
yeah.
Focus on the basics.
Yeah.
Just fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm, we'll deal with that, and we get there when we get there. Definitely.
Yeah, I'd like to use the language of sort of loss integration. Like, I
Oh,
don't
I
talk
love
about
that.
grief healing because it doesn't mean anything, but it's
Yeah.
that sense of really working that our losses into us.
Yeah.
And again, it's not something we choose, not something that we want.
Mhm.
But if we allow it and
Mhm.
integrate it, it will open up parts of ourselves that we
Mhm.
never dreamed were possible.
Yeah.
And so it really can be this really beautiful journey,
Yeah.
albeit long and hard and intentional.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. And paying attention to whatever those landmines of dates or holidays or whatever those things are. I'm planning the second anniversary. I'm in this completely different place, but I'm like, I might want to be thinking about how I'm going to spend that week. That might be a good idea.
Yeah.
But it very different than last year. But
Yeah.
night and
Yeah.
day different. But still a little thoughtfulness around that
Yeah.
is a good idea. But whatever those are, the um the final day at work when you knew it was coming, or x number of months have gone by and your spouse is wondering why you still don't have a job. um all of that is, it's one of the things that we actually talk about is, I get that your spouse is worried about you getting a job. I want you to find the right next job for you. So I'm going to have your back, but I'm also going to have theirs.
Yeah.
So I'm going to help you do the stuff that's hard. And that's where we get into that. When do you have the energy to do, and what's your hard things? Because not everyone's the same. The
True.
hard things versus easy things are very different person to person, and figuring that out. And when we literally, my group coaching program, we're doing a session on that again tomorrow. On they asked for mindset and emotional blocks coaching.
Wow.
That's what they asked for.
I
Yeah.
could use some of that, and I'm not looking for a job. But yeah, I mean, it's just so helpful.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
well, and a lot of what I'm talking about right now is that sense of how to have grief at work and how
Yeah.
to express it
Yeah.
intentionally, but
Yeah.
not overshare. We all hate the
Yes.
oversharing. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
but
What
to be able
happens
to
when you're
hold it in
at
the
work and you've got all this going on? Yeah.
Yeah, what happens at your at if you're at work? And also, like, what does it mean to interview? Like, you've taken this time off, you've had these griefs on later on top of each other. How do you talk about that in a way that actually shows someone you have grown, you've been intentional, you've had purpose, you might be different than what you were a year or two
Mhm.
ago, and
Yeah.
that's a good thing. How do we
Yes.
talk about it in a
Yeah.
way that is good and helpful and helps people
Yes.
understand our journey?
Yes, that's huge. Yeah, now I'm
Yeah.
sitting here thinking, so I've conducted 12,000 interviews in my life,
Oh
and
my
so
goodness.
I'm thinking about, how would I advise somebody to talk about that? And I have worked with, on 2 occasions, men who were the primary caregiver for their mothers before their mothers passed. And then how does a man in an interview talk about taking off from work to be a caregiver and then their loss in an interview? Yeah.
I'm just thinking about all the layers of what we expect of men, and especially in the corporate sector, and sort of what it means to be a leader, sort of that archetypal what it
Yes.
means to be a leader, and
Actually, but
contrast that.
there's your opportunity.
Yes.
Because the opportunity is, how did you use the loss to become a better leader? And that actually is your opportunity in the interview. We're not really here
Well,
to talk
and
about interviews, but I had to throw that out there.
yeah, I love that. Well, and I think about how all good leaders all good leaders know how to listen.
Mhm.
And so even being able to just articulate this sort of bigger space to know how to listen and attend to the needs of those around you is going to go miles. Um,
If
it's
that's
such
not
good
well
stuff.
received, you don't wanna work there, and you don't wanna be involved
Yes,
in that environment, because
that's it.
because that's the kind of leadership you want to be. If you are a leader, whether it's just of a small team or like me, 400 people, you want you want to be in a place where people value that kind of leadership. You
Yeah.
definitely do, for sure.
Yeah.
It
Well,
definitely.
Wendy, what else do we need to cover today? We
Well, I
have
was
covered a
just going
lot
to ask
already.
you that question. So first of all, um, when's our next call? We didn't look at the calendar before we did this.
We didn't. I mean,
Okay. So we want to tell you all about that. And we'll let you know when we have the event page up on LinkedIn.
we do,
Um,
Wendy. It's the 22nd of July.
that makes sense. Okay, 3 weeks from today. So three
Thank you,
weeks from
past Wendy
today.
and Sally.
Yes. And so we'll be getting that event page up pretty darn soon. So if you want to hear more about, and do you want to tell a little bit about what we're planning on covering in that?
Yeah, so just a quick story, but when I was leaving, when I was growing up, I went to a private school, and at the end of the year, after the last day of school, we had to go back for another half day. Can you imagine like the fifth graders just complaining? But the entire purpose of the day was called leave taking, and it was about taking the things home that you needed to take home. It was about cleaning up the desks in the rooms and getting it ready for summer, and about leaving what you needed to leave. And so I'm taking that idea and applying it to when we leave jobs. What does it mean to leave well for the company? What does it mean to leave well for us? And then what do we leave there and what do we take with us? And so I don't have a fancy name for it yet. I'll get that up soon, but that's the premise, is that sense of leaving well so that we don't take grief with us into our new position, so that we don't sort of take any frustrations or consternations into the new position, that we can show up and know what's left and know what we've intentionally brought with us, skills, dreams, you know, new understandings, all of these really amazing things that the new employer wants. But we've been intentional about it. We've thought about
Love it.
it. So
I love it.
yeah.
Wonderful. And if you did want the things, so what are we sending them? If they send us the word collide, or whatever word did you say, Wendy, in the DMs or in the comments? What is it that
So
we're
I,
sending?
I titled it When Two Worlds Collapse, a survival guide for grief and job loss. And it goes through some of the practical tips that I had, and I think even a few more.
So the
As
word should
well
have been
as
collapse, not collide. Okay.
we'll take it all.
Yeah, just tell us you want the stuff and we'll get it.
Stuff is perfect. So yeah, there's just a little form to fill out, and then it will come immediately to your inbox so that you can have it. It's got a quiz in there and some helpful things. It also has in there, I left it in there, Wendy. It also has in there just a quick reminder for all of us, that, sometimes when we're dealing with multiple losses, sometimes as we said, our brains change and they go in directions that they don't intentionally go to. So I have just a little reminder in there about the National Suicide Hotline and when to call a therapist, and all those things, just because we just never know who's going to need it and when they're going to need it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but there's a lot of stuff in there. I think it's 3 or 4 pages long, so it's definitely full of good stuff.
And I do also want to encourage people, and this has become something I do, whether it's one of my 4-minute lives or something like this, is if there's so many people that know someone who's lost a job or is losing a job. There are so many people who know people who've lost a loved one. If you know people who either are in either camp, let alone both, please do share this with them,
Yeah.
because that is the kindest thing that you can do for them right now.
Mhm.
So that I really want to encourage that. It's really important to me that we just remind you that you're probably not going to seem bossy or insensitive if you say to that person, I heard this thing and I think it might be something you might want to listen to. It might
Yeah.
help.
If anything, just what an act of love.
Yeah.
Just, kindness, just that sense of like deep connection of
Oh my
just, I
goodness.
heard you, here's something that
Yes.
made me think of you.
Yes. And
Yeah.
connection is like the best. So awesome.
Yes.
Okay. So did we cover all our bases?
I think we covered all the things we said we would cover and probably some
Mhm.
things we didn't say we would cover.
That sounds very much like us. Okay. So we look forward to having you join us in 3 weeks. We look forward to hearing from you so we can send you all the wonderful things. And if we can help you, either one of us, with any of the things that we talked about today, let us know.
And yeah, if you connect with either of us and need the other one, we know how to get a hold of each other. So
We sure
just
do.
reach out.
Yes.
Whoever's easier.
Yes.
We'll get you to where you need to go.
Exactly. I was thinking the same thing. So, yes. So, I'm going to thank you all for being here today.
Yes.
And
Thank you
thank
all.
you, Sally, for being here with me and
Thank you for
for
the
being on
invitation.
this amazing, really wild ride I've been on. And you've been on the fun part of the ride, but it doesn't mean it wasn't the hard part of the ride.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, thank
Okay. Sending you all lots of love and hugs. We'll see you next time.
Okay. Now, let me just get my mouse to go and turn this off.